Seneca once said, "It is not that we have a short time to live, but that we waste a lot of it." Cutting ties might be the most peaceful, powerful choice you can make for your happiness. Think about it. How many times have we stayed in situations that drain our energy and peace? We all know the feeling, that weight on your shoulders like something or someone is holding you back. But what if I told you that the key to your happiness and peace could be as simple as cutting ties? There are moments in life when holding on does more harm than good, when letting go is the only way forward. Now think about your own life. Are there things or people you're holding on to that no longer serve you? People, situations, or even habits that drain you, emotionally, mentally, or physically. What if cutting ties with them could unlock the peace and happiness you've been searching for? In today's video, we're going to explore 8 key moments when cutting ties isn't just necessary, it's the key to reclaiming your peace and happiness. Let's look at these moments and discover how letting go can lead to a more fulfilling, tranquil life. Seneca once said, "It is not that we have a short time to live, but that we waste a lot of it." Cutting ties might be the most peaceful, powerful choice you can make for your happiness. Think about it. How many times have we stayed in situations that drain our energy and peace? We've all been there, feeling stuck in relationships, habits, or situations that take away our peace. But what if the key to your happiness lies in cutting those ties? There are moments in life when holding on only keeps you from moving forward. Letting go of the people, places, and things that no longer serve you can unlock a new level of peace. Now consider your own life. Are there things or people you're holding on to that no longer bring you peace? What if letting go could be the change you need for happiness and freedom? In this video, we'll explore 8 key moments when cutting ties isn't just necessary, it's the key to reclaiming your peace and happiness. Before we begin, I would appreciate it if you liked the video, so that you can help me continue spreading Stoic philosophy. If you haven't subscribed yet, I highly recommend you do so and activate the bell, so you don't miss any future videos on Stoicism. Let's take a closer look at these moments and how cutting ties can lead to a more fulfilling life. Stoic principle of control. Marcus Aurelius once said, "You have power over your mind, not outside events. Realize this, and you will find strength." This quote captures the essence of Stoic philosophy. Control is not about controlling the world around us, but about mastering our response to it. When we talk about cutting ties, we're really talking about taking control of something that is often beyond our immediate grasp, our peace. In Stoic terms, this means recognizing what we can control and what we cannot. In every moment of life, there are things we can control, our actions, our thoughts, our attitudes. There are also things we cannot control, the actions of others, the way the world functions, or the events that unfold around us. Cutting ties, particularly from toxic relationships or situations, is a powerful act of recognizing that we have control over our own peace. Cutting ties and controlling your peace. The Stoics believed that external events are not the source of our suffering, our responses to those events are. When we remain attached to people or situations that drain our energy, it's often because we haven't yet realized the power we have to control that relationship. Cutting ties isn't about giving up, it's about taking back the control that is rightfully ours. Imagine this. You're in a friendship where the other person constantly criticizes you, drains your energy, or puts you down. Every time you interact, you leave feeling frustrated, hurt, or exhausted. The Stoic response would be to step back and ask, "What can I control here?" You cannot change their behavior, but you can control whether you continue to give them space in your life. By cutting ties with someone who harms your peace, you take control of your emotional well-being. Real life. Example: John's story of taking control. In every moment of life, there are things we can control, our actions, our thoughts, our attitudes. There are also things we cannot control, the actions of others, the way the world functions, or the events that unfold around us. Cutting ties, particularly from toxic relationships or situations, is a powerful act of recognizing that we have control over our own peace. Cutting ties and controlling your peace. The Stoics believed that external events are not the source of our suffering, our responses to those events are. When we remain attached to people or situations that drain our energy, it's often because we haven't yet realized the power we have to control that relationship. Cutting ties isn't about giving up, it's about taking back the control that is rightfully ours. Imagine this. You're in a friendship where the other person constantly criticizes you, drains your energy, or puts you down. Every time you interact, you leave feeling frustrated, hurt, or exhausted. The Stoic response would be to step back and ask, what can I control here? You cannot change their behavior, but you can control whether you continue to give them space in your life. By cutting ties with someone who harms your peace, you take control of your emotional well-being. Let's look at a real-life example. John had been friends with Mike for years. They'd gone to school together, worked at the same company, and even shared a passion for the same hobbies. However, over time, John began to notice something troubling. Mike was often negative, quick to judge others, and more he seemed to take pleasure in pointing out John's flaws. John started to feel drained after every interaction. What once was a friendship full of support had turned into a source of constant stress. One day, John decided to reflect on Marcus Aurelius's words, "You have power over your mind, not outside events." He realized that while he couldn't change Mike's attitude, he could change how he responded to him. Instead of constantly feeling frustrated and upset, John made the difficult decision to cut ties with Mike. He didn't need to have a dramatic confrontation. He simply stopped reaching out and allowed the friendship to fade. At first, it was hard. John felt guilty, as if he were abandoning someone who had once been important to him. But over time, he began to notice the positive changes in his life. He had more energy, more peace, and more time for the things that truly mattered. His decision wasn't easy, but it was empowering. By taking control over his relationships, John was able to reclaim his inner peace. The power of detachment. Epictetus, another Stoic philosopher, famously said, "It's not what happens to you, but how you react to it that matters." Detaching from people who no longer serve our peace is a direct application of this idea. The Stoics practiced detachment not as a way to disconnect from life, but as a way to protect their peace and mental clarity. Detachment doesn't mean indifference or selfishness. It means freeing yourself from the emotional burdens that others impose upon you. It's about protecting your energy, focusing on what you can control, and letting go of what you cannot. For instance, let's say you're in a workplace where the environment is toxic. The people around you are negative, gossipy, and create unnecessary drama. If you continue to stay in that environment without detaching yourself, your peace will be compromised. But by choosing to step back, whether by finding a new job or simply limiting your interactions, you're taking control of your mental and emotional state. You're saying, "I am responsible for my own peace." In conclusion, the Stoic principle of control teaches us that we are the masters of our own peace. By cutting ties with people and situations that drain us, we are taking back control of our emotional well-being. It's a powerful, empowering decision, one that Marcus Aurelius and Epictetus would have encouraged. As you move through life, remember, you don't have to endure toxic relationships or negative environments. You have the power to choose peace. Number 1, when you're in a toxic relationship. Sometimes relationships drain us emotionally, leaving us feeling mentally exhausted and emotionally defeated. Whether it's a romantic relationship, friendship, or family dynamic, being around people who don't support our growth or well-being can take a heavy toll on our peace of mind. Stoic philosophy offers powerful insights into how we should handle such situations, urging us to prioritize our mental health over unhealthy emotional attachments. As Seneca wisely said, "What is the point of tolerating these relationships?" Cutting ties here isn't about hatred or vengeance, it's about choosing your own peace. Let's look at Jake's story. Jake had been friends with Chris for over 10 years. At first, their friendship seemed solid. They shared similar interests, and Jake felt supported in his goals. But over the years, Jake began to notice a pattern in Chris's behavior. Chris would often belittle him, making sarcastic remarks about his work and life choices. Jake dismissed these comments at first, thinking they were just jokes. However, as time went on, these remarks began to chip away at his self-esteem. Chris's criticism was constant, leaving Jake feeling drained after every interaction. Jake started avoiding Chris, but he still felt conflicted. He had known Chris for a long time, and cutting ties felt like a betrayal. However, as the relationship continued to drain him, Jake remembered the Stoic lesson. We suffer more in imagination than in reality, a teaching from Seneca. Jake realized that the suffering he was experiencing by staying in this toxic relationship was far worse than the fear of losing an old friend. After much reflection, Jake decided to distance himself from Chris. It wasn't easy, but it was necessary. Jake explained to Chris that he felt the relationship was no longer healthy and that he needed space to focus on his own growth. Though it was a tough conversation, Jake felt a sense of relief afterward. He understood that he had to protect his own well-being and that it was okay to walk away from someone who wasn't contributing positively to his life. The Stoic lesson: control over emotions and detachment. In Stoicism, the focus is on what we can control, namely our own thoughts, actions, and reactions. We cannot control the behavior of others, but we can choose how we respond to it. This is exactly what Jake did. He took control of his emotional response by detaching himself from the toxic friendship. By doing so, he freed himself from the emotional burden that Chris's behavior had been causing. Seneca frequently spoke about the importance of detachment from harmful relationships. He believed that we should prioritize our emotional peace and personal growth, even if it means letting go of people who no longer serve a positive role in our lives. Epictetus also emphasized that our external circumstances do not define us. It is our internal reactions to those circumstances that shape our experiences. Jake's decision to cut ties with Chris was an act of self-respect and emotional mastery, aligning with Stoic principles of living virtuously and prioritizing inner peace. The practical takeaway is simple: cut ties with relationships that no longer support your growth, peace, or happiness. This can be a difficult decision, but Stoicism teaches us that our emotional well-being should always come first. Letting go of a toxic relationship doesn't mean you wish harm upon the other person. It means you are protecting your own mental and emotional health. The Stoics understood that peace is not something we find in the approval of others, but in our ability to detach from unhealthy attachments. By prioritizing your growth, you create the space for healthier, more supportive relationships in your life. Remember, it's not about severing relationships with everyone who challenges you or disagrees with you. It's about cutting ties with those who consistently drain your energy and hinder your well-being. You deserve to be surrounded by people who uplift and encourage you to grow into the best version of yourself. Number 2, when your work no longer aligns with your values. At some point in life, many of us find ourselves stuck in jobs or careers that no longer reflect our core values. This misalignment can create a deep sense of dissatisfaction, where the work feels meaningless or even morally conflicting. While the financial benefits may seem secure, the cost to your peace of mind and personal growth can be immense. Stoic philosophy teaches us that living in harmony with our values is essential to a fulfilling life. When your work no longer aligns with your beliefs or principles, it may be time to reassess and make a change. Let's take Jessica's story. Jessica had worked in marketing for a large corporation for over 5 years. She was good at her job, and the pay was more than enough to support her lifestyle. However, as time passed, she began to notice that the company's practices didn't align with her personal values. The focus was on maximizing profits at the expense of environmental sustainability and employee well-being. Jessica had always cared about social responsibility and wanted to be part of a company that prioritized these values. But as the company continued to push aggressive marketing strategies that she felt misled consumers, Jessica began to feel a growing discomfort. Despite the lucrative paychecks, Jessica's sense of purpose started to wither. She found herself dreading work each day, feeling as though she was contributing to something she didn't believe in. One day, while reflecting on her dissatisfaction, Jessica remembered a key Stoic teaching. It's not the things themselves that disturb us, but our opinions about them. This lesson from Epictetus resonated deeply with her. She realized that while she couldn't change the company's values, she could change her own path by aligning her work with her beliefs. It wasn't easy to walk away from a secure job, but Jessica took the courageous step to leave the company. She found a new role at a non-profit organization focused on environmental advocacy, a position that aligned much better with her values. Though it took time to adjust to a lower salary, Jessica felt a renewed sense of purpose and satisfaction. The new job allowed her to contribute to something meaningful, and her peace of mind returned. The Stoic lesson: control over our actions, not external circumstances. In Stoicism, we are taught that we cannot control external events, whether they are the actions of others, societal structures, or the practices of a corporation. However, we do have full control over how we respond to these situations. Jessica couldn't control the values of her company, but she could control her decision to stay or leave. This is where Stoic detachment comes in, letting go of the attachment to external circumstances, like job security, in favor of staying true to one's inner values and purpose. Marcus Aurelius often reminded himself to focus on what he could control, his own actions and reactions. By choosing to leave her job, Jessica demonstrated the Stoic principle of living according to nature, which in her case meant pursuing work that was in harmony with her ethical beliefs. The Stoics believed that when our actions are in alignment with virtue, we experience inner peace, regardless of external circumstances. The practical takeaway is clear. If your work no longer reflects your values, consider making a change. Staying in a job that conflicts with your principles can lead to inner turmoil, while aligning your career with your personal beliefs can restore your sense of purpose and happiness. Stoic wisdom encourages us to prioritize living authentically and pursuing roles that bring fulfillment, even if it means taking a step back or facing uncertainty. The Stoics believed that by focusing on what we can control, our actions, choices, and values, we can navigate any challenge with peace and confidence. In the modern world, this means recognizing that job security, while important, should not come at the cost of personal integrity. When your work no longer aligns with your values, it's time to make the difficult but necessary choice to step away, knowing that living in accordance with your beliefs is the true path to peace and happiness. Number 3, when you're holding on to the past. Holding on to the past can be one of the most significant obstacles to personal growth and inner peace. Whether it's a past mistake, a missed opportunity, or an old relationship, clinging to what has already happened keeps us from fully embracing the present moment and the potential of the future. The Stoics believed that the past is beyond our control, and what truly matters is how we respond to it. By focusing too much on the past, we distract ourselves from the present and hinder our ability to grow. To move forward, we must learn to detach from the past and live in accordance with what we can control: our thoughts, actions, and perceptions. Take Jake, for example. Jake had been in a serious relationship for several years, but things ended abruptly when his girlfriend Sarah decided to move across the country for a job opportunity. Although they had discussed their future together, their separation came as a shock, and Jake found himself fixated on the relationship's end. He constantly replayed conversations, wondering if he could have done something differently or if he could have persuaded Sarah to stay. He was haunted by the past, by what was said and unsaid, and this obsession kept him from moving forward. Jake spent months wallowing in regret and sorrow. His friends noticed that he had become distant and less engaged in life. He was stuck in a loop, reliving the past and allowing it to control his present. At one point, Jake came across a Stoic quote by Marcus Aurelius: "Waste no more time arguing what a good man should be. Be one." This quote struck him deeply. He realized that by constantly holding on to the past, he was wasting precious time and energy. He was allowing what had already happened to dictate his future, rather than taking responsibility for how he chose to move forward. Jake decided to make a conscious effort to let go of the past. He started focusing on the present moment, embracing new opportunities, and setting new goals. Instead of obsessing over what went wrong in his past relationship, he focused on personal growth, learning new skills, and building meaningful connections with people who shared his values. Over time, Jake found that he could think about the relationship without feeling the same deep emotional pain. He learned that peace doesn't come from changing the past. It comes from accepting it and choosing to live fully in the present. The Stoic lesson: detachment and control over emotions. The Stoic lesson that applies here is one of detachment. Seneca often taught that time heals what reason cannot. In other words, by detaching ourselves from our emotional attachments to the past, we create the space necessary to heal and grow. Stoics understand that we cannot change the past, and when we cling to it, we are allowing it to control our emotions and our actions. The Stoics also emphasize that our perceptions are within our control. We cannot control what has already happened, but we can control how we view it. Instead of viewing past events as sources of regret or resentment, Stoics encourage us to see them as lessons. The past is a teacher, not a weight to carry. Jake's story is a perfect example of how a person can overcome the tendency to cling to the past by practicing detachment. By applying Stoic principles, he was able to transform his perspective on the relationship and regain control over his emotions. The practical takeaway from this lesson is straightforward. Stop holding on to the past and start living in the present. The past cannot be changed, and by dwelling on it, we prevent ourselves from growing. Let go of regret, guilt, and missed opportunities. Instead, focus on what you can control: your actions, your thoughts, and your response to the present moment. Every time you find yourself clinging to the past, remember that it's only a story in your mind. The present moment is the only place where real growth and happiness can occur. In the spirit of Stoic wisdom, embrace the present and recognize that the only thing within your control is how you choose to live today. Like Jake, once you detach from the past, you'll find the freedom to move forward with peace and purpose. Number 4, when you're surrounded by negative influences. Life can be filled with negative influences that can drag us down and hinder our personal growth. Whether it's a toxic environment at work, constant pessimism from friends or family, or the negativity that surrounds us through social media, these influences can make it difficult to maintain peace and clarity. The Stoics teach us that while we can't always control our external environment, we have full control over how we respond to it. In situations where we are surrounded by negativity, it's crucial to remember that we can choose who or what to allow into our lives. Real-life example of Jessica's struggle at work. Let's consider Jessica, a young professional who recently landed her dream job at a major marketing firm. Initially, she was excited about the opportunities, the growth potential, and the chance to work with a talented team. However, as time went on, Jessica began to notice a toxic pattern in her workplace. Her colleagues, rather than supporting each other, often engaged in gossip, complained about management, and criticized each other behind their backs. Negative energy seemed to permeate every conversation, and the office atmosphere became increasingly draining. Jessica, who prided herself on maintaining a positive and productive mindset, found herself caught up in this negativity. She started to feel disheartened about her work, lost her motivation, and even began doubting her own abilities. The negativity around her began to affect her mental health and her productivity. One day, while reading a Stoic text, Jessica came across a passage by Epictetus. "It's not what happens to you, but how you react to it that matters." This struck a chord with her. She realized that while she couldn't change the attitudes of her co-workers or the culture of the office, she could choose how to respond. Jessica began to consciously limit her exposure to the negativity. She started avoiding gossip-filled conversations, focusing on her own tasks, and seeking out colleagues who were more positive and supportive. She also worked on controlling her emotions, reminding herself that she was not responsible for other people's negativity, only for how she handled it. Eventually, Jessica found herself regaining her sense of purpose at work. She even became a source of positivity and motivation for others, subtly influencing the environment around her. While not every aspect of her work life changed, Jessica's response to negativity shifted dramatically. By embracing the Stoic mindset, she was able to find peace in the midst of a difficult situation. The Stoic lesson: control over your reactions. The Stoic lesson here is one of control over our reactions. The Stoics, particularly Epictetus and Marcus Aurelius, emphasized that while we can't control the external events that occur, we always have the power to control how we respond. In situations where we're surrounded by negative influences, it's crucial to remember that our response is what shapes our experience, not the negativity itself. Seneca also spoke about the importance of guarding our minds and emotions, suggesting that we should be mindful of what we allow to influence our thoughts. In an environment filled with negative energy, it is easy to be swept up by the tide. But the Stoic approach teaches us to stand firm in our values and not let external negativity dictate our internal state. Jessica's story exemplifies how we can choose to detach from negative influences and focus on cultivating a peaceful mind. By practicing awareness and mindfulness, we can protect our mental and emotional well-being from the toxic energy of those around us. The practical takeaway from this lesson is simple: protect your peace by choosing what influences you. While we can't always change the environment around us, we have the power to decide what we let affect us. Whether it's distancing yourself from negative conversations, limiting exposure to pessimistic people, or focusing on your own positive actions, you have control over your emotional state. The next time you find yourself surrounded by negativity, remind yourself that you are the one who controls your response. In the words of Marcus Aurelius, you have power over your mind, not outside events. Realize this, and you will find strength. Take this lesson to heart and start actively creating an environment that nourishes your growth and peace. Number 5, when you're clinging to perfectionism. Perfectionism is a trap many of us fall into. The desire to do everything perfectly can create immense pressure and dissatisfaction. Whether it's a work project, personal goals, or even daily tasks, striving for perfection can lead to frustration, stress, and ultimately a feeling of never measuring up. The Stoic philosophers, however, offer us a different perspective, one that focuses on progress rather than perfection and on accepting the reality of our limitations. Real-life example of Jake's struggle with perfectionism. Jake, a young software developer, had always prided himself on his meticulous attention to detail. His drive for perfection was evident in every project he took on. At first, his colleagues admired his thoroughness and commitment to excellence. However, as time went on, Jake began to feel overwhelmed by the constant need to get everything just right. His projects took longer than expected. He became anxious about making even the smallest mistake, and he found it hard to accept anything less than flawless results. Jake's obsession with perfection became a source of stress, and soon his work-life balance was suffering. He was spending extra hours revising his code, endlessly tweaking designs, and stressing over every little detail. His personal life began to take a back seat, and he started to feel burnt out. Despite his achievements, Jake felt unsatisfied and disappointed with his work, always thinking it could be better. One day, Jake came across a quote by Marcus Aurelius that resonated deeply with him. "Perfection is not achievable, but striving for excellence is." This reminded him of an important Stoic lesson. The pursuit of perfection is an illusion. Jake realized that his desire to get everything perfect was creating unnecessary stress and preventing him from enjoying the process of growth. Instead of focusing on perfection, he shifted his mindset toward continuous improvement, acknowledging that mistakes and imperfections were part of the journey. With this new perspective, Jake began to embrace the concept of good enough. He learned to finish tasks with the knowledge that perfection was not necessary for success. His work became more balanced, and his anxiety started to subside. Jake understood that striving for excellence didn't mean striving for perfection. It meant doing his best without being consumed by unattainable standards. The Stoic lesson: accepting imperfection. The Stoic lesson here is about accepting that perfection is not within our control, but our effort and attitude toward improvement are. The Stoics teach that we should focus on the things that are within our control, our actions, our thoughts, and our responses, while accepting the things that are outside of our control, such as outcomes or others' opinions. Epictetus famously said, "Wealth consists not in having great possessions, but in having few wants." Similarly, striving for perfection often stems from wanting something that is beyond our reach, which leads to dissatisfaction. The Stoic approach encourages us to set realistic goals and focus on the process, rather than obsessing over the end result. In Jake's case, he learned to prioritize progress and excellence over the impossible pursuit of perfection. This shift allowed him to release the pressure he had been placing on himself and embrace his limitations as a part of being human. Instead of focusing on what he couldn't control, he chose to focus on what he could: his effort, learning, and personal growth. The practical takeaway here is clear: stop striving for perfection and focus on progress. Perfection is an unattainable goal that only leads to frustration and burnout. Instead, focus on doing your best and improving a little bit every day. It's the small, consistent steps that lead to long-term growth and success. In situations where you feel the urge to perfect something, take a moment to assess whether your pursuit of perfection is actually helping you or hindering you. Ask yourself, is this a moment for progress, or am I holding myself back by trying to make everything flawless? Recognize that mistakes are opportunities for learning and growth, not failures to be avoided at all costs. The Stoics remind us that what matters is not achieving an ideal, but living in accordance with our values and doing our best within the bounds of our current abilities. By letting go of the need for perfection, we allow ourselves to move forward with clarity, peace, and purpose. Number 6, when you're stuck in comfort zones. Comfort zones are seductive. They provide a sense of safety and predictability, but staying in them for too long can limit personal growth and prevent you from reaching your full potential. Whether it's staying in an unchallenging job, sticking to familiar routines, or avoiding uncomfortable situations, comfort zones can keep us from experiencing life's opportunities. Stoicism teaches us that true growth and virtue come not from avoiding discomfort, but from embracing it, knowing that it is in discomfort that we often find our greatest strength and wisdom. Real-life example of Jessica's struggle with comfort. Jessica, a 32-year-old marketing manager, found herself in a comfortable routine. She had a stable job, a steady income, and a predictable work-life balance. Her role wasn't challenging her anymore, but she stayed in it because it was familiar. She didn't have to stretch her abilities or take risks. Life felt easy, but it also felt uninspiring. She knew deep down that she was capable of more, but the fear of stepping into the unknown kept her from making a change. One day, during a casual conversation with a colleague, Jessica was introduced to the idea of launching her own marketing consultancy. Initially, the thought excited her, but it also terrified her. What if it failed? What if she wasn't good enough? The fear of stepping out of her comfort zone kept her stuck, and she almost dismissed the idea altogether. However, after reflecting on a passage from Epictetus, it is not the events themselves that disturb us, but our judgments about them. Jessica realized that her fear was based on how she was perceiving the change. She wasn't afraid of the challenge itself, but of the judgments and assumptions she made about it. This was a turning point for her. She understood that fear was not an obstacle, but a sign that she was facing an opportunity for growth. With this realization, Jessica decided to take the plunge. She started by taking small steps, attending networking events, learning more about starting a business, and seeking advice from others who had made similar transitions. Over time, her small actions led to big changes, and she found herself not only more fulfilled, but also more resilient in the face of challenges. By stepping out of her comfort zone, she discovered a sense of purpose she hadn't known before. The Stoic lesson: embrace discomfort for growth. The Stoic lesson here is clear. Growth comes from discomfort. Stoicism teaches us that it's in challenging situations where we are tested, where we face our fears, and where we find the opportunity to cultivate virtues like courage, resilience, and wisdom. Stoics like Marcus Aurelius and Seneca often spoke about the importance of enduring hardship and stepping outside of our comfort zones in order to grow. Marcus Aurelius reminds us in his Meditations, the impediment to action advances action. What stands in the way becomes the way. In other words, the obstacles that we face, whether external or internal, are not meant to stop us. They are meant to show us the way forward. Stoicism encourages us to see challenges as opportunities for self-mastery, helping us break free from the comfort of the status quo. The Stoics believed that it is in confronting adversity that we truly find who we are. Avoiding discomfort keeps us stagnant, while embracing it allows us to build strength and cultivate wisdom. Jessica's initial fear of the unknown was a sign that she was on the verge of something great. It was the discomfort she felt that pushed her to take action, and it was through that action that she discovered her true potential. The practical takeaway here is to embrace discomfort as a path to growth. It's easy to stay in familiar, comfortable situations because they feel safe, but true growth requires stepping into the unknown. Whether it's changing careers, moving to a new city, or taking on a new project, pushing yourself outside of your comfort zone is where you'll find your greatest opportunities. Next time you feel stuck in your comfort zone, ask yourself, what is the fear really about? Is it about failure, or is it about growth? Recognize that the discomfort you feel is not a sign to retreat, but a sign that you're on the edge of something transformative. Take small steps, face the discomfort head-on, and trust that the growth you'll experience on the other side will be worth it. As the Stoic philosopher Seneca said, "It is not the man who has too little, but the man who craves more, that is poor." In other words, don't settle for a life of comfort and mediocrity. Challenge yourself, grow, and step into the unknown, because it is there that you will truly find fulfillment and strength. Number 7. When you're relying too much on external validation. In today's world, it's easy to become attached to the opinions of others. We live in a society that often values likes, comments, and approval, and it's tempting to seek validation from others to feel worthy or successful. However, relying too heavily on external validation can lead to emotional instability and a loss of self-worth. Stoicism teaches us that true self-worth comes from within and that we must learn to detach ourselves from the constant need for approval from others. Real-life example of Jake's struggle with external validation. Jake, a 28-year-old software developer, was constantly seeking approval from his boss, peers, and even social media followers. Every time he completed a project at work, he would anxiously wait for his boss's feedback, hoping for praise. If he didn't get a compliment, he would feel frustrated and doubt his abilities. Similarly, when he posted updates about his work or personal life on social media, he would check for likes and comments repeatedly, feeling a boost of self-esteem with each positive response. But over time, Jake noticed that this cycle wasn't making him feel genuinely fulfilled. Instead, it created a sense of insecurity. Whenever the feedback was not as positive as he hoped, he felt deflated. His sense of value seemed to hinge on the approval of others, which left him vulnerable and unsettled. One day, after reading Meditations by Marcus Aurelius, Jake came across a passage that shifted his perspective. The opinion of 10,000 men is of no more value than the opinion of one. This was a powerful reminder to Jake that external opinions, no matter how many, were irrelevant compared to his own sense of purpose and self-worth. Jake decided to make a change. He began focusing on doing his work to the best of his ability, not for the praise, but for the personal satisfaction of knowing he had done his best. He stopped obsessing over social media likes and comments and started focusing on his own growth and development. Over time, this shift allowed him to find a deeper sense of fulfillment that wasn't tied to the fleeting opinions of others. The Stoic lesson: true self-worth comes from within. The Stoic lesson here is clear. Don't base your happiness on what others think of you. Stoicism teaches us that our value comes from within, not from external validation. Marcus Aurelius and Epictetus both emphasized that we should not allow the opinions of others to define us. Instead, we should focus on our own thoughts and actions, which are within our control. Epictetus, in his discourses, says, "It is not what happens to you, but how you react to it that matters." In other words, we cannot control how others perceive us, but we can control how we respond to their opinions. The Stoics argue that we should prioritize our internal judgment and cultivate our own sense of virtue, rather than seeking external approval to feel good about ourselves. Relying on external validation can lead to emotional fluctuations. One moment we're on top of the world because we've received praise. The next, we're crushed by a negative comment or lack of recognition. Stoicism offers us a better path, detaching our self-worth from external sources and instead focusing on our own actions and values. By doing so, we build resilience and inner strength. The practical takeaway here is to shift your focus from external approval to internal fulfillment. Start by recognizing that your worth is not determined by others' opinions of you. Instead, define your value based on your actions, character, and personal growth. To do this, begin by practicing self-reflection. At the end of each day, ask yourself, did I act with integrity today? Did I do my best, regardless of whether I received praise? This practice will help you focus on what you can control and detach from the need for external validation. Additionally, try reducing the time you spend seeking validation on social media or waiting for compliments from others. Instead, set personal goals and measure your success by your own standards. This will help you develop a deeper sense of self-worth that is independent of the opinions of others. As Seneca wisely said, the greatest wealth is to live content with little. True contentment comes not from others' approval, but from being at peace with who we are and how we live our lives. When you stop relying on external validation, you free yourself from the emotional roller coaster of seeking approval and instead cultivate a more resilient and grounded sense of self. Number 8. When you're chasing things you can't control. In life, we often find ourselves chasing after things beyond our control, whether it's the approval of others, outcomes at work, or trying to fix situations that are outside our influence. While it's natural to want to shape our circumstances, the Stoics teach us that focusing on what is within our control is the key to peace and resilience. The constant pursuit of things we can't control not only leads to frustration, but also robs us of the opportunity to grow and find peace in the present moment. Real-life example of Jessica's struggle with uncertainty. Jessica, a 32-year-old marketing manager, was always fixated on securing the next promotion at work. She worked tirelessly, often staying late and pushing herself to the brink, believing that if she just worked harder, she could control the outcome. However, despite her efforts, there were always factors beyond her control, such as company politics, budget constraints, and leadership decisions that played a significant role in promotions. One day, after a particularly exhausting quarter where she didn't receive the recognition she expected, Jessica felt overwhelmed with frustration. She realized she had been fixated on something outside her control, the decisions made by others. This relentless pursuit of outcomes that weren't entirely hers to influence left her emotionally drained. While browsing through some Stoic readings, Jessica came across a quote by Epictetus: "Wealth consists not in having great possessions, but in having few wants." The idea struck her deeply. Her unhappiness was rooted in chasing external validation and outcomes that were beyond her reach. Jessica realized that her peace and contentment would only come from focusing on the things she could control, like her own work ethic, her mindset, and how she responded to situations. From then on, Jessica shifted her focus. Instead of obsessing over getting promoted, she concentrated on doing her best every day, focusing on improving her skills and fostering positive relationships at work. She found satisfaction in knowing that she was putting in her best effort, regardless of the outcome. Over time, this shift in focus helped her feel more grounded and content, and she even found that her work became more rewarding. The Stoic lesson is simple yet profound. Focus on what you can control and accept what you cannot. Marcus Aurelius, in Meditations, reminds us that our efforts should be concentrated on our own thoughts, actions, and attitudes, not on things we can't influence. According to Stoic philosophy, we do not have control over external events, but we do have control over how we respond to them. In his Enchiridion, Epictetus teaches that we must distinguish between what is within our power and what is not. We can control our own decisions, behavior, and mindset, but we cannot control the actions of others, the weather, or the economy. The Stoics believed that true freedom comes from accepting this fact and letting go of the need to control everything around us. By focusing on what is within our power, we remove the burden of frustration that comes with chasing after the uncontrollable. This shift allows us to redirect our energy into personal growth, resilience, and emotional tranquility. The practical takeaway here is to stop chasing after things beyond your control and instead focus on mastering your own response to the situation. Begin by identifying the areas of your life where you feel frustration and ask yourself, am I focusing on something I can't control? If the answer is yes, try to let go of that pursuit and shift your focus to what you can influence. For example, if you're stressed about a work situation, focus on improving your skills, cultivating a positive attitude, and being proactive in your duties. Let go of worrying about things like your boss's decisions or the outcome of a project that depends on factors you can't control. Practice the Stoic exercise of saying to yourself, What's in my control is my effort and attitude. What's out of my control is the result. This simple practice can help you realign your focus and free yourself from the stress of chasing things you can't influence. As Epictetus wisely noted, it's not what happens to you, but how you react to it that matters. Focus on your reactions, your choices, and your growth, and you will find peace, even when faced with uncertainty. When you accept that certain outcomes are not in your hands, you free yourself from the emotional turmoil of trying to control the uncontrollable. The emotional freedom of letting go. A journey to clarity and growth. There comes a time in everyone's life when we realize that holding on to something, whether it's a friendship, a job, or even a belief, no longer serves us. It weighs us down emotionally and mentally, making it harder to move forward. Cutting ties can feel like a dramatic decision, but it's often the first step toward emotional freedom and personal growth. It's in the release, the letting go, that we create space for new opportunities, clearer thoughts, and a more peaceful heart. The weight of negative influences. We all have those people or situations in our lives that drain us. Negative friendships, toxic work environments, or even familial relationships that never seem to change. These are the emotional anchors that keep us stuck. It's hard to imagine what life might be like without these familiar yet exhausting influences. But the truth is, as long as we hold on to them, we remain tethered to the past, stuck in patterns of negativity that prevent us from evolving. Let's talk about Sarah, a 28-year-old woman who had a friend, Linda, who always made her feel inferior. Linda was constantly critical of Sarah's choices, from her career to her personal life, and no matter how hard Sarah tried to please her, Linda's judgment never wavered. For years, Sarah tolerated this relationship, telling herself that friendships go through ups and downs, and this was just one of those low points. But deep down, she felt exhausted, emotionally drained and confused. She began to doubt her own decisions, unsure if she was making the right choices for herself. Sarah's turning point came when she realized that she was constantly seeking approval from Linda, even when it came at the expense of her own happiness. One evening, after another harsh conversation with Linda, Sarah felt a wave of clarity wash over her. She remembered the Stoic teaching from Epictetus. It's not what happens to you, but how you react to it that matters. In that moment, Sarah realized she had the power to choose her response. She didn't need Linda's validation to feel good about herself. What she needed was to let go, to stop allowing Linda's negativity to define her self-worth. The relief of letting go. The decision to cut ties wasn't easy. Sarah had been friends with Linda for years, and the emotional bond was strong. But the more Sarah reflected on her life, the more she realized that keeping the relationship meant sacrificing her peace. She began to understand that letting go wasn't about hating Linda or even rejecting her. It was about reclaiming her own mental and emotional space. It was about recognizing that she deserved better. The first few days after the breakup were emotionally charged. There were moments of doubt, wondering if she had made the right choice, and pangs of guilt. But as the days went by, Sarah began to feel something that had been missing for a long time: relief. The mental weight that had been pressing on her shoulders started to lift. She could think more clearly, breathe more easily, and focus on what truly mattered to her. Her relationships with other friends improved because she no longer had to divide her energy between maintaining a toxic bond and being present with people who uplifted her. It wasn't just about getting rid of negativity. It was about creating space for new growth. By cutting ties with Linda, Sarah opened up room for new friendships, new opportunities, and a renewed sense of self-worth. She started pursuing hobbies she had neglected, focused more on her career, and invested in relationships that nurtured her, not drained her. For the first time in years, Sarah felt emotionally free. Here is Stoic lesson of detachment. This emotional freedom is a direct result of practicing Stoic detachment, the ability to distance ourselves from things that don't align with our values or well-being. Stoicism teaches us to focus only on what is within our control and to accept that some things are simply beyond our influence. In the case of Sarah, the toxic friendship was beyond her control, but her response, her choice to let go, was entirely in her hands. Seneca once said, "Freedom is the only worthy goal in life. It is won by disregarding things that lie beyond our control." Sarah's freedom didn't come from trying to change Linda's behavior or fix their friendship. It came from her choice to detach herself emotionally and walk away. By doing so, she regained her power. She stopped allowing someone else's negativity to control her emotions. The power of letting go is transformative. It's not just about removing someone from your life. It's about freeing yourself from the emotional burden they carry. When we cling to things, people, or situations that no longer serve us, we hold on to emotional baggage that keeps us stuck. But when we release these ties, we make room for new growth and mental clarity. The decision to cut ties may be difficult, but it's an essential step toward living a life aligned with your true values. The relief that follows is like a fresh breath after being underwater for too long. Your mind becomes clearer, your heart lighter, and your focus sharper. If you find yourself in a toxic situation or holding on to relationships that drain you, ask yourself, what am I truly getting from this? Is this relationship or situation helping me grow, or is it holding me back? Remember, letting go isn't a sign of weakness. It's a powerful act of self-care and strength. Take a step today, no matter how small, to start releasing what no longer serves you. Whether it's distancing yourself from a toxic friend or setting a boundary at work, know that by letting go, you are making space for growth, clarity, and emotional freedom. In conclusion, embrace the freedom of letting go. So, what's the takeaway here? Cutting ties isn't just about removing people or situations from your life. It's about creating the space for what truly matters. The Stoic principle of detachment teaches us to focus on what's within our control and let go of what isn't. By doing so, we free ourselves from emotional baggage, allowing our minds and hearts to heal, grow, and focus on the things that bring us peace and joy. Think about it. How often do we hold on to toxic relationships, stressful work environments, or situations that drain our energy, all in the name of loyalty or fear of change? But in reality, we're only keeping ourselves stuck in a cycle of frustration and unhappiness. As Epictetus said, it's not what happens to you, but how you react to it that matters. You have the power to choose your response, and in some cases, that means choosing to let go. Take a moment to reflect on the relationships or situations in your life that may be holding you back. Are there friendships that no longer serve you? Are you staying in a job that doesn't align with your values or happiness? By letting go of these negative influences, you create the emotional freedom to pursue your true passions and live a life that reflects your best self. The practical takeaway is simple. When you let go, you make space for new opportunities and growth. Whether it's a toxic relationship or a limiting situation, don't be afraid to take the courageous step of releasing what no longer serves you. The peace, happiness, and clarity you'll gain from it will empower you to live a life true to yourself. It's time to take control of your own emotional well-being. Start applying this Stoic principle today and watch how your life transforms when you begin letting go of the things that hold you back. Thanks for watching. Remember, true freedom comes from the ability to let go of what doesn't serve us. By embracing Stoic detachment, we clear the path for peace, growth, and happiness. So, take a moment today to reflect on what you might need to release, whether it's a person, a situation, or an old habit, and make space for something better. If you found this helpful, don't forget to hit that like button and subscribe for more content like this. And remember, as you go through your journey, keep focusing on what's in your control.